Councilmember Hart.
Here.
Councilmember Hill.
Here.
Councilmember Moore.
Here.
Councilmember Wilson Smith. Here. Vice Mayor Pern.
Here.
Mayor Myers.
Here.
Mr. Flynn.
All right.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I would ask for a motion to go into closed session exactly regarding three different topics, one of which has been part. First, pursuant to Virginia Code Section 2.23711A1, discussion of the employment of public officials, and that deals with the city of Athens city attorney position.
There we go. Okay. All right. So the first item for the closed session, motion to go into closed session, would be for personnel pursuant to Virginia Code Section 2.23711A1, and it's discussion of candidates for employment. That's city manager and city attorney is the subject. The second is pursuant to 3711A3, which is discussion regarding the acquisition or sale of or disposition of publicly held property, and that regards 20 West Tab and the museum. And then the other item is pursuant to Section 2.23711A7 regarding probable litigation requiring the advice of counsel. And that's regarding the regional utilities issue.
Is there a motion to go into closed session?
Question.
Councilman Coleman.
I had a question, Mr. Mayor. Is it any way possible that we can do this after the meeting? I mean, everybody got here on time, and I just don't want to keep our citizens waiting. So can we have our meeting and then afterwards go into closed session?
We're going to follow the agenda. Councilman Coleman.
It doesn't matter to me either way, but I was just trying to, everybody got here, so we can go into closed session and have you all wait. It doesn't matter to me.
Would it have to amend the rules of council? I can ask Mr. Flynn. Yeah. Can I ask? Do we have to amend the rules of council?
We have to amend the rules of council. Okay. You want to move and go in the shit? Okay. No, you don't need a motion. You were getting ready to motion, so we're good. All right. Go ahead, Madam Clerk. Well, you brought it up. We don't need a motion. Yeah. All right, go ahead, Madam Clerk.
To the next item?
Yeah.
Okay, the next item is number 3, moment of silence. Can I please have everyone to join me for a moment of silence? Thank you. Can I please have everyone to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America The next item, item 5, presentations, proclamations, and recognitions. We have no items for this. Item 6, consent agenda. There are no items. Item 7, a public hearing. In accordance with the rules of council, public comment will be heard before discussion by council. Once discussion has started, no further input from the public will be accepted and each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes. Item A, a public hearing for a special use permit pursuant to Article 23, Section 415 of the zoning ordinance to operate a nightclub, subject to certain terms and conditions at 3270 South Crater Road. The property is zoned B2 General Commercial District. Ms. Peters.
Good evening, Mayor Myers, Vice Mayor Pam, members of council. The request for your consideration this evening is for a restaurant to expand its services and become a nightclub by definition in the zoning ordinance. And so a nightclub is defined by the zoning ordinance to include an occupancy of more than 100 persons, entertainment, a dance floor, and staying open past 11 p.m. You do not have to have all three. It's just a combination or just one could deem you to become a nightclub. In our zoning ordinance, there is an exception that a restaurant may have a dance floor and they may have entertainment. The limitation on that is that it cannot exceed more than 10% of the floor area of the building in order to just still be considered a restaurant. So once you want to stay open past 11 p.m., you want to exceed the floor area of 10%, then you are considered by definition of the zoning ordinance to be a nightclub. And so our zoning ordinance says that you can have a nightclub. It's just that it has to receive review and a decision has to be made by the Planning Commission. And the Planning Commission has had a public hearing and several meetings to address the application, and then ultimately City Council have to approve it. And so when we started out, the application came in early May. We met with the applicant, the owner of the restaurant, to explain some of the concerns we had in the planning department with. Number one, there had been an incident where there was a shooting at Wawa, and we heard about it, and so we talked to the owner about what happened to get his side of the story, because as you know, it's 2 sides and 3 sides to a story. It's everybody's side, and then the truth is somewhere in between. So that we didn't have to go on things that we've heard, we wanted to hear it from the owner of the restaurant. And there was an activity that took place at his restaurant, and at the conclusion of that activity, persons who attended went over to Wawa's, and from there was an incident. Not necessarily directly tied back to anyone who was at the event at his restaurant, but we had the conversation about public and safety controls and how he planned to manage that. And so in having those conversations, we talked about the requirements where you have to have either off-duty police officers or you have to have private security. And the previous security that he used would not be considered, as we were told they were part of the problem. And so with all of that being said, we entertained the application and we took it to the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission at its regular meeting had questions, and they required us to go and talk to the community and talk to the ownership of the Wawa, the operators of the Wawa on South Crater Road. And so we did that. We had several conversations with the general manager. We even had a conversation with the regional manager. We made them aware of the public meeting that was held at Ward 2 back in June. We invited them to attend that meeting. Councilman Darren Hill and some of his colleagues it was in Ward 2, but he invited others to come and be a part of that. It was considered a town hall meeting. And at that time, we made a presentation and we shared the requests that we had received. And during that time, we had discussion from persons who thought it was a great idea. We had discussion from persons who wanted to make sure the police department could handle an incident at this club. And so after that meeting, we took it back to the Planning Commission for them to take action. And that was their July meeting where they took action to present to you a recommendation of denial by a vote of 5-2. The Planning Department is recommending approval, and the reason we're recommending approval is because currently there are existing now, the restaurant exists, and this is the floor plan for the restaurant. And so what will happen is there will still be a full-service restaurant that will utilize, it's a square. So all of this is floor area right now. You can close off the box. This is floor area that you can have dinner, lunch, in the restaurant. At some point, the restaurant will close, normally between hours of 9 and 10, and this section would be closed off and will not be a part of the nightclub, the entertainment, the recreational use. It would be the areas that you see here, and of course the bar. I don't want anyone to get caught up in the configuration because that could very well change depending on what event he is hosting. This may be a dance floor, or this may have a small dance floor. It all depends on the type of programming. But once you give the nightclub use, he would be able to do that at his discretion within the confines of the conditions that have been established. And so the request is to expand the hours Thursday through Sunday from 10 until 2, understanding that everything will be shut down and ending by 2 a.m. There was some concern about the hours being as late as 2 a.m., but we did not, and the planning department put the condition that it had to close any earlier than at least the 1:30 so that everyone can be out and the parking lot could be clean and cleared by 2 a.m. So we also discussed this with the development review team. I want you to understand the care and the time we took to address the concerns of the community as well as the businesses. So we discussed this with the development review team. And on that team, we have Lieutenant Wills, who represents the police department. And there was some concern about the number of police officers being able to handle an event at this location, which is Plaza Mexico. You have Traditions here in the plaza, and you have Outlaws here, and you have Wawa's. And the reason Wawa is on this map and plan, and we're talking about it, is because they're openly. So they are typically your 24-hour operation. And so in talking to the police department about the requirements that the restaurant will be governed by, they would have to have sufficient security. And of course, there are going to be some events that they have that they very well may have to go through the special events application just to make sure they have the appropriate coverage and that the police department is aware of the event and understand who will be working so that they could work together. And so that is the application that we present to you today with all of the information that you have in your packet for a special use permit for Plaza Mexico to be allowed to expand their hours, not necessarily every Thursday through Sunday, but that they would have the flexibility to have recreation and entertainment uses. I would, at the appropriate time, take questions, and the applicant is also present. At the appropriate time, would address any questions that you may have.
At this time, I open the floor for public comment.
My name is Bill Sizemore. I own the go-kart track beside this restaurant. I've had a lot of mixed emotions about this. I actually believe it should be approved with very strict controls. I think that we should, I have lighting on my side, that we can use to light up the parking lot to make sure that the parking lot is clear at 2 in the morning. I think that there's a lot of things that the community needs. The jobs will be reopening the go-kart track probably within the next 6 months. Thank you.
Good evening, Brandon Martin, Berkeley Avenue, Petersburg. I've lived in this city for 41 years. Think back about 15 years ago, and I asked you to reflect on what went on at the Copper Mine Cafe, restaurant, whatever it was downtown. Just think about it. Thank you.
Are there any more comments?
Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. My name is Linwood Christian. I reside at 42 Mistletoe Street here in the city of Petersburg. You know, I honestly thought I would never be in this city long enough to see another club have the nerve, or have anybody have the nerve to say they want to open up a club in Petersburg. Now, as the last gentleman before me said, we have had some clubs that have really pressed the last reserve nerves of the citizens of Petersburg. And some of those have been up and down Sycamore Street. I can say, having gone to the copper mine, they didn't start having problems till they started letting the under 25 crowd come in there. But then there are those clubs that have done well, whether you would believe it or not. Green Lantern was one of them. Our little hole in the wall right there off of Halifax Street. Every once in a blue moon you heard about something going on there. Not shootings, but if you did, it was few and far between. Now in times like this, where come the summer of 2017, we possibly won't even have a recreation program. Looking at the number of jobs and other things that are fleeing this city, it may rain tonight worse than what it has when I say I agree with the Planning Commission. Let's let this club open. Because plain and simple, you're running the citizens away from the city. And people my age, we would like, I even look at the problems that have been given to Miss Parker, who owns Neptunes. You know, there's very few things people my age and up can do without having a problem. Now, I would agree, but you can't do it like that. But a lot of these clubs that let 25-year-olds and under come in, that's where you have your problems at. But again, from what I'm understanding, if I'm right, Ms. Peters, most of their events, again, will be few and far between that they have there. And let's face it, there is nothing on Crater Road, nothing but Crater Road and Wawa. And I've been in Wawa at the one time when they did have a event at that very place. And I would say it is not fair to try to blame them from what happened at Wawa, because we have a lot of people that just, they don't think right. So again, I would ask council to approve the recommendation that came from the Planning Commission. At least give us some kind of hope when there really is none. Thank you.
Ganaway?
Good afternoon, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council Member, other guests, City Manager. My name is Brunel Ganaway, 652 Old Wagner Road, Petersburg, Virginia. I too say that we should approve this. Mr. Sizemore, I remember meeting him some years ago. I don't know if he remember me, but we had an event where we were helping the students to find jobs in the summertime. I was impressed that we were invited to come there, and he showed me the promotion of how he used a program of helping youth be promoted and just doing basic little mediocre jobs to work up to become managers. And it really impressed me to see a person that he's the owner. If you heard what he said, he's the owner of the property. So that means that he's a person that's hands-on. He knows about his own property. And I don't think he'll want something that will be destroyed. So I think we should consider that when you see a man who has come up here as an owner and also have done something to put into Petersburg. For our youth as well, that thing really impressed me. And I was just thinking about it when I was sitting there, how he was training these people. Some of these people were turned down in other positions, but he used them to put them in a position where they can be managers and getting jobs. We didn't think about that. Thank you.
Ken Pritchett, 1113 Overbrook. Sometimes, in fact a lot of times, Mr. Christian has expounded some words of wisdom from time to time, and I think one thing you might look at, and also Madam Planner, this age thing is a significant problem with some of these type operations. So if you go back and look at the history of it, it has been the 21, the 25, and some places who allowed under 21s in illegally. But if the Planning Commission could consider, and Council consider, maybe not 25, but maybe 23 even. But I think an age restriction is a good idea. I also think that there are things that need to be done in the south part of the city rather than all concentrating downtown. So there are people that live out there and live in the surrounding counties that could be good customers for Petersburg. We're going through a period of time right now that people aren't coming to Petersburg. I just didn't think it was going to happen, but it is happening, believe it or not. If the Planning Commission could go back, or Council could introduce some other conditions that there would be consequences if certain things happened with police enforcement, if there were consequences, if there were one or two certain types of incidents that happened, then they would be closed down rather than just letting it go on with a slap on the wrist. So I would recommend approving this with some further conditions that perhaps the planning department could add, and you all could add as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any more comments? Seeing no further hands, this public hearing is closed. Mayor Myers.